There are plenty of movies and even comic books about what it's like to be a rock star or to be a rock star on the road. But what about the groupies and the people around the rock stars? There's not always a lot of content around them or about them. But that's where the book Groupies comes in. Groupies is written by Helen Mullane and illustrated by Tula Lotay. In Groupies, we follow a group of girls that go on the road with a band. And throughout the book, we shift different perspectives from each girl in each issue, and we later on discover that the record label and members of the band have been sacrificing girls on the road so that this band can gain stardom. The book is only 5 issues long, but it's engaging but kind of confusing. First off, this book is definitely an adult book. The art and the things that are drawn in this book definitely meant for adults. Each book also shifts perspective from one girl to another. So you get a different perspective in each issue to kind of see how they're being treated by the band and by the other girls on the road. The first issue focuses on how the band meets the girls and is done in the perspective of our hopeless romantic Lisa, who thinks that she's going to be the only girl that the lead singer is going to love and really ever want to be with. But often case, if you know anything about rock stars and being on the road, they rarely have that sentiment. In the first issue, we also see one of the main girls that's introduced in the book get left behind because she's killed by some of the members of the record label so that this band can get even more popular as they go on the road. As we go through issues 2, 3, 4, and 5, we shift perspectives to different girls and we see how they are experiencing their time with the band. Some of them are really hateful that some of the band members don't love them or love other girls more than them. Some of them don't like how some girls are just picked up along on the tour and treated better than they were, even though they were with this band before they started to get really big. And throughout this entire time, everyone's having tons of sex, everyone's having drugs, and when anything related to human sacrifice or demons or anything like that is kind of brought up, the characters are really easily able to push this off on, oh, you had a bad trip, or maybe those drugs were a little bit too much for you, you were too high, or maybe you drank too much, you just need some water and sleep it off and you'll be fine. Whatever you were seeing, it was just part of a bad trip. But we start to see in issues 3, 4, and later on 5 that that's just not the case. 2 girls end up having some pretty bad trips, seeing some crazy things, and realizing deep down demon stuff and people dying are exactly what's happening. And in issue 4, the girl whose perspective we were viewing it from, Lisa, she is put in a car by one of the record executives and never seen again. Later on, we find part of her body just in the middle of the street, and one of the girls finds her and is like, oh, that's bad. This girl's dead. And they link that these girls that have been going missing is tied to the record label. And in the end, they try and push the band members to confront the record label and say, look what they're doing. Do you condone this? Are you willing to step away from being a rock star? Like, the record label is killing people to make you famous. And the record labels and demons tell the band right there and then, you need to kill these girls right now, or say goodbye to your career of being a famous musician. And one of the band members who's very much in love with one of the girls can't do it, which is a surprise and kind of a shock to some of the girls because they thought he'd at least have the guts to just make it fast or to stand up and say everything's wrong. But he doesn't even renounce that. He wants to be a famous musician. So it's kind of bittersweet for her. In the end, Vera, the girl who's kind of seen as the meanest of the group, steps up and says, don't do this to them. Don't do this to us. I'll come along on the road with you and get plenty of other girls for you to kill, but you should let my friends go. In a weird turn of events, the demons say, yeah, we'll make this deal. The band continues to go on the road, and the 3 girls that are left from the group go off on their own and decide that it's a new chapter for them and creativity is going to be their focus. All in all, this book was kind of confusing because we're shifting perspectives so many different times and we're kind of telling the same story, but not really at the same time because we're not really viewing the same 5 days from the same girl's perspective. Every time we shift to a different issue, we don't know how much time has passed, but presumably it's been maybe a week or so. But even inside each issue, the amount of time that's passed is hard to tell. And maybe that's because we're trying to emphasize how much drugs have really affected some of the groupies, and that is relatable to things that happen on the road. If you've seen the movie The Dirt, the Motley Crue movie, it's crazy what happens on that road, and that's just from the band's perspective. This is from the groupies' perspective, where they're trying all the time to be appealing and hot to the guys that are on the road that they're traveling with, so they don't get bored with them and ditch them and pick up a new girl that they just meet in whatever city they're in. I can definitely say that from this comic and other content I've consumed, life on the road is definitely tough. I've watched interviews of musicians who have said the exact same thing. Especially as you get older, it gets tougher and tougher on your body and your mental health, and you just don't have time for all these bad habits. So this comic book does a pretty good job, I think, of illustrating what it's like to be young and in a rock band on the road and like all the stuff that's kind of happening. But they mostly just do it from a groupie's perspective, which is important because we often just don't see that perspective. We do see a little bit of how it affects the band members, but the band members are also kind of treated as the bad guys, so we don't see too much of their perspective. And they definitely are the bad guys. So even though they're not doing like demon worship or sacrificing people, that's the record label, the guys are definitely just jerks and terrible people. And that's also brought out through the book as well too. But if I were to read this in one sitting, I think it would be easier for me to say that it's a good book. But just reading issue by issue over a couple days, it's tough for me to give this book a really high rating. Honestly, I'd probably give it a 5 or 6 out of 10, but that's mostly just because of the art style, and I've had to sit and think about this book for a couple days before filming this video. I think the message that they're trying to get across and the experience that they're trying to communicate is definitely one worth reading and trying to understand, but the way it's presented is not necessarily the best. There's just too much time lost between each issue and sometimes within each issue. I think if they had been able to make this maybe 6 or 8 issues instead of just 5, this would have been a book that they could have gone deeper into some of the backgrounds of the girls or tied some of the scenes a little bit closer together, because we're spending the majority of each issue in each girl's head. We're not really having a ton of dialogue happening between characters, and because we're shifting between each person's head in every issue, it's sometimes tough to really know what's going on. It's more so just, here's what's going on in this person's head and how they're experiencing things. Might work really well for an audiobook, but when we're trying to just jump from one page to another and see what's going on, and we're expecting the story to move on, but we aren't really able to gather necessarily what's going on all the time, because we're getting that just because of how people are processing information. When we shift someone's perspective, it's not really telling us what's going on. It's just, here's the series of events and how someone interprets it. And when we shift to a different perspective in each issue, someone may interpret some of those events differently. So it's sometimes kind of hard to know, is that the same thing that happened in this issue, or is this something else? So the art, I think, does a really good job of giving it a good rating, or the rating that I gave it. But overall, the story just needed more. And I think 1 or 2 more issues could have done a better job of trying to flesh out or give more context for what was happening with the girls on the road and give more of their perspective. And I also think the ending could have been a little bit better. I was expecting something a little bit more climactic to happen, but for the girls to kind of just split and the demons and the record label to say, hey, we're going to part ways, it's fine, just kind of seemed like, okay, what was the point? Maybe there'll be a follow-up where the 3 girls that survived are going to be doing more, or maybe they become demon hunters, or maybe they form their own band and they go on the road and they're tempted by demons to be famous. I don't know. But when the last page came up, I was expecting the girls to do a complete 180, sell the guys out to the demons, have the demons kill them, and then they would rise to fame and they would be the pop stars. That's honestly what I thought the ending was going to be. And I was looking forward to that ending. And I'm okay with endings shifting or changing, because we want to have the mat kind of pulled out from underneath of us and be surprised from time to time. But this just wasn't the ending I was thinking it was going to be. Again, if there's going to be a sequel to this book, then I'd pick that up and see what happens with the girls next. But if this is just a self-contained story, it's lower on my list of things to recommend to people just because of the shifting perspectives, and you've really got to pay attention to what's going on and accept that you're changing perspectives every single issue. And it's not the same story necessarily from one issue to another. Now, Groupies is a comixology original, but they are coming out with a physical version later this year through Mount Cave Studios. And I would recommend picking up the physical version as opposed to the digital one, because I feel like in physical, you're going to be able to kind of glean those details of what's going on. The shifting of perspectives is going to be easier to translate. And overall, the colors and how great the art is going to reflect a lot better, I feel like, on the page as opposed to digital. But if you read Groupies, let me know what you think. Do you think this book deserves the 6 out of 10 rating I'm giving it? Or do you think I should have rated it higher? And if you haven't read it yet, you can go to comixology, read it there, or wait for this book to come out later this year in print, and come back to this video and let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.